Want to really thank Angel Beat and also all the speakers before me. They covered all of the gamut of the terminologies and the concepts and how Gen AI is really being used in enterprise today, right? So a lot of enterprises started building things as soon as ChatGPT came out. In fact, few of them are experimenting with pre-ChatGPT related transformer models and so forth. So that started the process of building. And when ChatGPT came out and subsequently a lot more LLM started growing the last year, since then, it's been a flood of uh, generative AI applications and solutions. Most of them experimental, slowly trickling towards productions systems. And that LLM ops discussion, thank you, Arun. So it's really perfect because that's on something we are doing. So my group at Impetus is like Ron mentioned, is a large organization. We have 3,500 people spread over many areas. We work with all of the hyperscalers and especially with all the data providers and enterprises across many verticals. So I'll be speaking briefly about it. So I lead the data science practice here, based here in New Jersey. Excited to be talking to all of you today. So my talk is more on how to unlock innovation and scale with Gen AI. So it kind of meshes in with all the concepts discussed prior to this session. So what I'll go into is kind of start where, in fact, Mamoon has started, right? So the idea of the whole market growing is something that's significant because just like I think Mamoon mentioned, this 7 trillion GDP addition to the GDP is coming from many, many things that going to happen over the next 10 years at the cumulative CAGR of about 42% as according to one study from Bloomberg. And if you see all of this spread over many areas, from hardware innovation and hardware to software, and under which all the AI, generative AI, and all of that. And it's across the spectrum. There are many, many areas that it will touch. And we are at the early stage of that. We're not even into area where all of these will start generating ROI. And that's why the investments becomes very, very important. And that's a great question somebody had. A lot of these new revenue is going to come from, things like assistants, co-pilots, and that's the early stage. And once the Gen AI pieces get into all of the interactions that we have on a daily basis and all the apps and so forth, we'll see a lot of productivity and other things. So I'm very optimistic, and I think there's a lot of potential for this. There's just the one slide I just had on the potential for the market and how it's going to grow in all of these areas.
Hey,
So of
one thing I
course,
just want to point out exactly what Robbie says. This is a great time to try and look at proof of concepts. It's some analogous if you think about cloud from 10 or 12 years ago, where people, or 15 years ago, people had on-prem Exchange servers, and then they migrated to either Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace as the very easy cloud deployments. And now they're getting into more sophisticated deployments such as Oracle or mainframes in the cloud. So this is a perfect time to work with firms like Impetus, get the low-hanging fruit, verify these proof of concepts, and then start rolling it out. And that's the analogy where cloud was 15 years ago. That's where AI is today.
thank you, Ron. That's you hit the nail on the head. So essentially, it's how do you get even started? What do you need to do? So that's where the point about bringing harmony between your data and infrastructure comes in, because that will help you to do many POCs quickly. And without that kind of a framework that measures all the data and infrastructure, and the reason I mentioned infrastructure that includes compute and everything else is because without that, you'll start doing some use cases, but they will have limited success. That means, they may be experimental, they may not grow beyond that. So there needs to be a mechanism to take those small use cases, POCs, and build further on that. The more of them you do, the funnel gets easier to kind of take to production. And that's where scalability comes in, because you want to be able to scale and grow and impact your customers. Essentially, they need to have new experiences, and that's how they get sticky. So without this, of course, you end up with missed market opportunities, which is what we're seeing. Ultimately, it's going to hinder innovation, and we think ultimately all of these needs to be tackled front end by kind of figuring out how to bring a harmony to the data and infrastructure together. The way we're thinking about it, Impetus, is multifold. There are 5 pillars that we kind of help articulate to our customers. So primarily, there's this architecting, accelerating, and scaling GenAI. So under that, the first step we take is kind of building out an architecture, the roadmap, how to figure out which use cases to go after, how do you even assess where the customer is, what do you need to do with regard to selecting LLMs, and all of these questions that we ask to kind of create that strategy and architecture. And then we kind of understand what the customer needs to do to kind of establish a GenAI foundation, because that's a critical part of enabling you to kind of bring intelligence across the enterprise, because there may be multiple groups across the enterprise doing small things, but when you bring all of those together and a platform, essentially unifying all of your data estate, that helps kind of create synergy that you can tap into, and that will help you create a comprehensive structure for moving forward towards deployment. So of course you also need to bring the foundation for the LLM deployment, be it on Azure, AWS, GCP, or any other place, or even on-prem. So being able to do this with modern stacks is very important. So the users need to be able to have access to all of these systems. Oftentimes, some of these apps also are real-time monitoring and maintenance, like Arunatsu mentioned just a while ago, very important. All of this, of course, it has to be integrated with all your data sources. Now, you don't want to give all your data to providers like ChatGPT and expose your data. So RAGs and LLMs go very well. So this is something we're doing. I'll cover about that in a little while. And then, of course, bringing all of the concepts around knowledge graphs and everything else is important from point of view of being able to make a check for hallucinations and others. So these are areas under data foundation. Now, the next step is around responsible AI, where we work with many providers to kind of address all the aspects around reliability, privacy, accountability, transparency. These are all concepts that are very important and essential in enterprise, as opposed to in experimental work. Then, of course, you ought to be able to kind of bring together the information and knowledge within the enterprise. That means you need to be able to leverage what you already know, because LLM has information, knowledge about the world at large, but it doesn't know anything about your data. So how do you kind of use prompt libraries? How can you build embeddings from your data? That's where vector databases and fine tuning and all of these pieces come in. So we kind of work with a lot of customers, kind of walking through all these steps. And the last piece is scaling and using LLM ops. So all of that is also kind of a flow that goes from one end to the other. So we are kind of working with customers across this whole spectrum. And I think it's a lot of information. So I just wanted to leave you this one picture. But what I wanted to get into is how we are working with customers in terms of various areas. Could it be text mining, natural language processing, computer vision, audio, multimodal LLMs. So there are a lot of things and many LLMs available now. So we have kind of built out some, excuse me, use cases around all of these areas. And this is just a kind of like spectrum of things we've been playing with over the last months, years to months. And we have built a lot of solutions as well, which I'll talk about, and how these kind of mesh with the work that we are doing for customers. For example, we built solutions for summarization, translation. Of course, yeah, this has leveraged AWS Kendra, right? So, in fact, before reInvent, we were working with the team, kind of building out a chatbot and RAG and all of that, and essentially, kind of also, it was great to see Amazon Q come on stage. There's a lot of things it enables, and of course, with text translation, we worked with our one of our entities to kind of do Urdu to English translation. We can do that for English language. We have used a multilingual model for this. And this is very important in all the markets where English is not the primary language, right? So that's very important for many applications and some of our customers. Report generation across the spectrum, there are many, many areas where this applies. Semantic segmentation, of course, these are pre-LLM, pre-chat GPT days in terms of like how we apply transformer models and many other areas. So things around we did for the airlines with layout LM3, which is kind of like a pre-chat GPT version, large language model for extracting text from images. And lastly, of course, extracting generating SQL from text. So essentially, without having to write code, you could essentially interact with databases. And we have built some applications. I'll talk to you about that shortly. But this is just kind of glimpse of what we have built as we were kind of like, coming up to speed with all the things happening in the generative AI space. So one example here is this work we did for a large pharma company, right? So essentially, this is they're a drug discovery company. They have a lot of documents, and this is one of the companies, and we're working with other companies as well in this space in pharma and drug discovery. So being able to kind of hit the documents that they have in place without having to expose them to chat GPT or others. So essentially, we kind of use document embeddings and summarize these documents from different sources and kind of enable them to kind of make sense of this data. Could it be publications? Could it be clinical trial data or drug molecules? All of that information. So it helps that we can index all this data on Kendra and make it searchable. And now Kendra has a chatbot through Amazon Q that's even better. So we had actually built this before that came on board with SageMaker Jumpstart, and this is something that incorporates RAG as well. So at the under the hood. Another solution we are actually working. Sorry, my voice is going. Another solution that we are building right now with financial services and the retail organization is kind of building a chatbot that interfaces with the dashboard. Essentially makes the dashboard more dynamic, being able to work with data security in kind of baked in. And the reason is essentially they don't want to expose their data, which sits in external database. There's a firewall that kind of prevents you from accessing that. So essentially there is data cleaning steps and the internal database maintained that we kind of access, but the user has the ability to kind of query the database. And I think like Martin pointed out earlier, looking for the LLM being hijacked and looking for all kinds of ways people can jailbreak LLM is important. So that's why we're putting a content detection model, make sure the prompts going to the LLM are very secure. And essentially, once you're able to fine tune or use prompts on the LLM, in this case, we're using open source LLMs. Essentially, we can actually drive a query evaluation validation. So what's coming out of that in this particular case, it's a T5 model. Essentially, that kind of is used to generate a SQL, and that SQL drives the internal database. It hits the database, and that generates the returns, dashboard change. So primarily, what you're doing is you're asking, let's say you're looking at a KPI on your dashboard, then you kind of type in, or you can use a voice prompt to kind of ask it a question. That is parsed out, and it generates a SQL, and it kind of gives you a result back. And if that SQL is, if that input is kind of not what it's expecting, or it's likely to break, then that will throw an error. So essentially, this is something that's being built, and it has applications in many other customer use cases as well. And we are kind of building this further out. Another example in insurance space is we kind of built out a solution to look at this is GPT 3.5. How do you score for underwriting risk? Primarily, it could be property insurance, could be healthcare, could be many other areas. So essentially, the idea is to capture all the data that's available on that particular individual, or and look at what are the key factors that that contribute to underwriting decision. And this is important for many insurance agencies, partly because it's a very laborious process of looking through all this data. And LLMs actually are very well suited for ingesting all of this data and working with ML model on the classification side to kind of predict the underwriting risk and use that to generate a report. It improves the productivity significantly and helps the people working on these kind of applications to kind of leverage these technologies to quickly come up with the results. And it also helps the end users, could it be patients or the somebody in a vehicle accident, to kind of quickly get a decision on the claim they may have filed. So what I want to come to next is kind of give you a glimpse of what we are working across various enterprises. So we're looking at summarization of large documents, that's the translation from foreign languages. This is work we're doing with many customers. And I think one of the speakers mentioned about personalizing IVR for contact centers, essentially being able to personalize. Mamoon had actually mentioned that in the video that he showed. So this is something we're doing for a financial services organization. In fact, as you speak, the menu becomes personalized for you, and it is actually very interesting because we have to detect the intent of how that person is calling, what is calling about, and then personalize that the menu accordingly. instead of a static menu. And similarly, sales transcript generation. So it's something very interesting because the salespeople are speaking with prospects and they need to be able to give them product information. So bridging that with all the previous touch points and generating a transcript for the sales person is very helpful because it makes their job a lot more easier and they're more productive. So that's another area. And chatbots for financial analytics, we are doing that similar to the use case I just mentioned before this. Lead matching and assignment is something we're doing with financial services for improving the sales processes. Matching is a very good problem because it's an application where you could apply LLMs because you're trying to hit the right results in the vector space, and you could essentially give it a prompt or a query and automatically generate the result. And it's better than ML. So this is something that's in progress. LLM ops and building and deploying generative AI use cases is again something we are working with many customers. And one of the key area customers for us in this space is large airlines. We built many things for them, and in fact, rolled out a big internal GPT for them as well. And this is something that will impact all of their use cases, from all the passengers to internal employees to crews and all their operations. Pharma and drug discovery I talked about, and again, data labeling is another application we're looking into, partly because it helps kind of look at large data sets and use LLMs quickly label them as opposed to kind of using traditional ML. Code generation support, document intelligence is again another area. It's very critical. Looking at tons of documents, in fact, could be emails, could be other PDFs, Word documents. All of these we could extract information intelligence from this using LLMs. Lastly, task automation is very, very important area because it helps kind of enterprises figure out where LLMs can apply and where they can improve productivity. So all of this is something we're doing as part of Impetus, the under data science practice. So we have a framework to help customers, like Ron mentioned earlier, quickly do a lot of POCs. We have something called a Impetus Data and AI Labs, which includes a design lab and a build lab. And that helps kind of like quickly run POCs, the workshop, and then a build lab where we kind of build out a quick MVP. And essentially all of this happens to Impetus, and we are part of the generative AI and ML services under data science, where we deliver value to our customers. So this was one last slide where I'll just talk about how we help our customers. It's more detail about this specific offering, but we'll be happy to talk more and discuss if anybody is interested. I just leave. I think this was the last slide. So we'll be happy to take any questions.